Well, welcome back to the homestead. Today's episode, I want to see about starting an apiary. So, when I first bought this land a number of years back, I had said I wanted to get into beekeeping and that I was going to pursue that once we finished our house and got moved in. And as luck would have it, we're just a couple of months from getting moved in, and one of my neighbors here actually has a couple of beehives, and they contacted me the other day and said, look, we're ready to get out of the hobby, and was wondering if you'd be interested in the hives. So I told them absolutely, and we're going to pick those 2 hives up Friday. And rather than bringing them here, directly here, because we're not located very far from our neighbor, maybe an eighth of a mile or so, we're actually going to pick them up from my neighbor, and I'm going to take them to a location just outside of town, maybe 5-10 miles from here. And that way the bees will have to reorientate. They basically get oriented to their surroundings, and they recognize landmarks and things. And if you move them a short distance and they go out foraging for food and can see the landmarks that they're familiar with, there's a chance that they're going to try and navigate back to where the hive originally was instead of where it's located now, get lost, and basically starve to death because they can't find the hive. So in order to avoid any issues like that, we're going to move them a number of miles away where they won't recognize anything, allow them to get oriented to that area, and then we'll move them back here permanently. And when they come back here permanently, I need to have a stand for the permanent location. Now, you can go any number of ways with a stand for beehives. A lot of people just build a little wooden stand that's movable, set them on that. Some people set them on cinder blocks. Some people put them on wooden crates. Some people even put them directly on the ground. But there's issues with that. And if you can get them up off of the ground, you have less trouble with skunks. You have less trouble with ants and mice and things like that. And it's just easier on your back to lift the supers because the deep supers weigh, I think, around 80 pounds or so, and the half supers are about 40. So it can be kind of heavy, and if you're having to stoop way over to pick them up off the ground, you know, it's just a little harder. So we're going to build a raised stand behind us here, and we're going to put some feet on that that are going to isolate it from the ground to protect it from ants crawling up onto it and getting into the hive. And I'll go into that a little more as we're building it. But basically, we're just going to build a permanent stand back here that's raised up for the beehives. So let's go ahead and get started on laying that out and see if we can't get it installed. All right, so here's the plan for the stand. I'm basically making it out of treated 4x4s. I've got 2 pre-cut 4x4s that are 6 foot long. Then I've got a couple of shorter 4x4s that are going to go in the middle here. So we'll put some construction adhesive on that, and then we'll use these rigid structural screws, and we'll screw through the 4x4 into the brace here on both sides, and we'll basically make a big rectangle. And once we have that done, I've got some more 4x4s cut for the legs. We'll put the construction adhesive on there, put it on, and then drill down through the top into the leg to secure those. That way we'll basically have a table. Then we're going to take a 4-inch PVC cap, and we're going to screw that to the bottom of the legs. Then we're going to drill an 1.5 inch hole in the center of that cap into this leg, and we'll be able to insert this conduit into that. So the whole table will be sitting on this conduit. Then we're going to dig a couple of holes in the ground and bury this PVC pipe here. We'll put the conduit into the PVC pipe, and we'll fill about half of this tube with cement and cement the conduit into the ground. That'll leave me about half of this tube as a void, and I can fill this void with any kind of liquid such as transmission fluid or Dawn dish detergent or anything that the ants don't like, or even diatomaceous earth, whatever works best. I can fill this with that so that when the ants crawl up here and they have to cross this void, whatever's in here, they won't like that, and they won't cross it. That'll prevent them from crawling up the leg here to get into the stand of the bees. And then also, since the conduit's what's in contact with the ground, it'll prevent the rotting of the stand a little longer anyway. So that's the plan. Let's go ahead and mark some of the holes for this and get those pre-drilled, and then we'll see about screwing this thing together. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I've selected what I wanted for the top and the front of both of these runners. So I need to go ahead and mark that. And that way I've got the best side facing up and to the front where you would see them. The next thing I want to do is get the center of both of these and mark where the first cross beam is going to be. They're 72 inches exactly, so the center is going to be 32. I'm just going to place my block on here. I'm going to mark the outside edge, both of those. Then I'm going to mark it on the front. Now I want to turn the fronts up. And I've got to mark the drilling pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark a diagonal right across where those boards are going to be. And then we're going to eyeball the center line to one edge. We'll just half that. And this doesn't have to be exactly precise. So we'll just mark those. And then on the ends, I can do the same thing. Alright, so now I'm ready to go ahead and drill the pilot holes. Alright, now that all the pilot holes are drilled, I'm ready to start assembling it. Alright, so now that we got the basic rectangle built, I've got a pre-drill for some legs on each corner, so let's go ahead and lay out for that. Alright, so now that I've got all the legs attached, the next thing I want to do is put one of these caps at the base of each one of the legs. So let's go ahead and screw those in. So now that I've got all the caps attached, I'm going to drill a hole in each one of the legs for the conduit to fit in. So now that we've got all the holes drilled, we're going to see if we can drive the conduit into the legs. Alright, I think I'm going to have to set this down onto the ground to do that. So now that the table is pretty much built, we're going to flip it over, set it exactly where we want it to be. I'll mark the legs where they contact the ground with a little marking paint. I'll dig some holes where each one of them is, deep enough to bury one of these with just a few inches of pipe sticking out of the ground. We'll set concrete around this pipe, and on the interior of the pipe, put the table back down in it so that the legs go down into the cement. Then we'll water the cement and let it set up. That'll secure the table to the ground, but then it'll give me a few inches of this that I can fill with any kind of fluid or diatomaceous earth or whatever I want to prevent the ants from crawling in and getting onto the metal leg and going up. So let's go ahead and mark it and dig the holes. Alright, so here's the fun part. We've got the holes dug. Now I've got to put the pipes in there, flip this table over, get the conduit to go in all the legs or all the pipes. Then level the table until it's level side to side and tipped slightly forward so that any rain that hits the bottom board will run out of the hive and not into the hive. Once I do that, I've got to then backfill the outsides of the hole and the interior of the pipe with some cement, and then we can let that set up and we should be good to go. But I think the hardest part of this whole project is going to be getting the table there and getting it leveled up and all the pipes set just like I want, because it's a lot of moving pieces. So let's see how we do with it. Alright, so I've got the table level from side to side, about a half a bubble off coming to the front, and then we've got all of the pipes separated about, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch to an inch below the caps that are on the legs. So all that's got cement around it and inside of it now. I'm going to go get some water and come back and water these in. We'll let it dry overnight and then we can come back and it'll be ready to caulk it and paint it. Alright, so now that we've got it all secured to the ground and assembled, the next thing we need to do is get a coat of paint on it. So I've got some help coming, and we're going to see if we can't get that knocked out real quick.
Painting white.
Why not?
Because it's not a good color. Yeah. I don't like the color white.
That's the color we got to paint.
Yeah, you've already bought it. I've already started painting, so nothing I can do now.
Just go with the flow.
Hey, that's what I was about to say.
All right, so now that we got a coat of paint on it, we're gonna let that dry, and then I'll come back and try and get a second coat on it, and I'm gonna put some mulch down on the ground under here to help suppress the weeds under it, because I don't want to have to run the weed eater right up next to the beehive if I can help it. And the mulch will help raise the ground and level it so it's not so uneven, because the ground's pretty uneven where I put the stand. And it'll also help suppress the grass and the weeds. So let's let this dry, and then I'll try and come back and put the finishing touches on it, and we'll get a couple of shots of it after it's done. All right, so we've gotten a couple of coats of paint on the hive, or on the stand now, and I've actually picked up a new hive and a new deep super and gotten some paint on it, and this should be ready for bees now. So I mentioned earlier I was getting a couple of beehives from my neighbor, and I've gone ahead and picked those up and moved those just outside of town, and then they've been there for about 2 weeks, so they're really ready to go ahead and bring back out here now. And one of those hives is a single deep super. So what you see here is a 2 deep stand. And what I'm going to do is that single deep hive that I got from my neighbor needs a little bit more room. So when we bring them out, we're going to transfer them into this new hive here so that they have a little more room. And then we're going to take the box that's freed up from that, and we're going to add that to the other beehive, because they also need some more room. But they already have 2 deep supers, so we'll have one hive that's 2 deep and then another hive that's 3 deep. And then we'll be focused on getting those ready to overwinter. So until next time, y'all just keep checking back.